Alrighty folks, in today's video I'm going to do a tier list of my own paintings. I thought that this video would be interesting so that you could see what a self-critique looks like at different levels. Watching a critic's perspective has helped me to be able to see what makes a piece of art effective, but also how to take a great piece of artwork and make it even better. I'd say that my technical ability mostly plateaued when I was about 16. The only thing that has helped me to continue to make my art better is the ability to look at my artwork and know how to push it. So I hope to offer a perspective that can help you look at your artwork better. I'm gonna rank 16 pieces of mine, ranging from when I started painting until now, so that as the video progresses, the critique will get more and more complex. Starting out, okay guys, hear me out. We all start somewhere. This is a portrait I painted of Gabbie Hanna. Hey! Watch your mouth. I was either 13 or 14. It was late 2017. When I started painting, I didn't do so on paper or canvas. I did it on my dresser. I would paint a new portrait or something basically every day, and it was so much fun. Looking back, I did have a spackling of poorly painted influencers on my dresser in my bedroom, which was a choice. It's difficult to earnestly critique this, but looking back, I would have really benefited from using a toned ground. You can see some white gapping through the passages of this painting. It would be much less noticeable if there was a mid-tone painted underneath. This would have also helped me paint the value much more accurately. From how I painted it, it looks like I used a reference photo with very little structure. If there were some stronger shadows webbing across Gabbie's face here, I would have been much more set off to create a good portrait painting. If you nail the shape of the shadows, that is all you need to create a convincing depth and likeness, which is like 60% of portraiture. If I had the opportunity to tell my younger self one thing that would instantly improve my art, I don't think I would take it. Trust me, I have a lot I could say. Hold your brush differently, step back, look at this video about color theory. But honestly, offering my younger self an academic perspective would kill a lot of the freedom that I felt at the time. I was having such a blast creating art with no rules, and honestly sometimes I'm still jealous of that part of my growth. So with that, I think I'm going to put Miss Gabbie solidly in the F tier. I still have some of these with me. I was 14 here. I think it's promising that I was already expanding on my reference photos. I was really into beauty YouTubers at the time, so watching Nikki tutorials and Jazzmyne talk about contouring literally taught me about bone structure for portraiture. I painted on basic contouring and highlighting shapes, and it already gives this painting so much more structure than Miss Gabbie. That's a pretty odd way to learn how to paint, but I've never been particularly academic in the way that I've taught myself to paint. If I figured it out, I figured it out, but I wouldn't take steps to learn about the things that I wasn't interested in. And honestly, to this day, I think that that's fine. If you're not interested in working on something, then you're just gonna burn yourself out. I painted on new makeup for this painting, which I think is kind of cool. I think that the yellow highlighter is the most interesting of my efforts. Paintings should be working towards the most saturated color, which is where the viewer's eyes will be drawn. So if you want to make someone's eyes really pop, you paint the brightest colors there. This is called contrast of saturation. With this painting, I think that the yellow highlighter should be the focus. I think that the green hair could still maybe work, but this pink shirt is like beyond egregious. A gray maroon type of color would have gotten the idea across much better. The background motif is interesting as well. It is just a completely separate painting from everything else going on. I would have liked to see my younger self dive further into these things that I was exploring. Make the makeup colors brighter and more smudgy and abstract, and the background motif can blossom throughout the entire painting and maybe even become an element of this makeup. Lastly, the whites of the eyes are just far too bright. Your eyes are a sphere within the socket, so shade them as such. I think that this is a good direction for me, but the white jelly roll epidemic of 2016 got me good, so I'm gonna have to put this one in the E tier. On to 2019, this is a modified copy of the artist Tillith. I was obsessed with her for like 2 years while I was learning how to paint, so I would literally just copy a photo of her artwork to teach me how to paint. This painting is the last of about 20 direct copies I did of her work, and honestly, I think that this is a fine way to learn how to paint. A much more posh way to brand it is a master copy. Doing copies are such a fantastic way to get a really hands-on experience studying a piece of art. However, try to be as ethical as possible when you do these. You can copy the old masters up and down with credit. But if you're going to copy a contemporary artist, I would consider reaching out to them for consent to post. if you can get in contact with them at all, that is. Credit is key. In this painting, I also took heavy inspiration from the artist Haley South for the halo design. Haley was a huge name for me for like 3 years right after I got done with Tillith. So in this painting, I was trying to merge a neon space nymph painting with a walnut ink pre-Raphaelite aesthetic. And obviously, I ended up with a painting that was so obtrusively incohesive that I'm actually blown away. I was really struggling for like a year or two to figure out if I like really bright paintings or really neutral paintings. This is because the two biggest pillars of my inspiration were at opposite ends of that spectrum. This painting is a really great representation of that dilemma. Now I've decided that I do really like bright colors, but I need to work around them so that the brightest moments of a painting are the most magical. And a detail that really pisses me off is the harsh hairline. There's a transition between a forehead and hair that I didn't pick up on for like the first 2 years of my practice. E tier. Okay, so here I'm 15. I worked on this oil painting of Morgan Freeman for 2 weeks, I think. I honestly don't really have that much to say. At this point, I had figured out how to mix any color accurately, which was a huge step for me. The detail is really impressive. I think that the likeness is spot on. I don't know what to say. I'm bored. I'm so bored. In fact, I'm pissed off. Maybe I'm entirely out of touch at this point, but I think that this painting is so boring. I think it's soulless, and I think it's easy. There are thousands of people on the earth right now who can make this exact painting just as good or better than I've already done it. Where's my artist's voice? Why is it important for me to make artwork if this is all I have to say? I'm being an asshole right now because this is a perspective that I wish I had heard sooner. This is something that I have a lot to say about, and it is a perspective that I think I can make an entire video on. So if you want me to make a video about all of my unsolicited opinions about the state of realism, let me know. And the hair is poorly done. If this was a good realism painting, the hair is a great opportunity to have a moment of looseness, but this isn't loose. This is, I don't know how to paint hair. Sargent is a really great example of this. He paints unimportant moments of a painting very loose, so that in contrast, the details can really sparkle. If everything is rendered in painstaking detail, you are actually making everything look less impressive by comparison. E tier. I don't care. I'm putting it at the bottom of E tier too. So this is my first self-portrait as a painter. I was freshly 16 here. This was my favorite painting for a while after I painted it, and I didn't find the magic of this painting until like the last 30 minutes of the process where I did all the fun scrapey type of stuff. It's really cool that I was willing to take risks like this in my art in the past, and it's a spontaneity that I should honestly really reconnect with. I didn't understand atmosphere at all when I painted this, but I painted the atmosphere almost exactly how I would today. The lighter and more blue you make the shadows in a painting, the more you can push them back into the atmosphere of a painting. This is a huge pillar of my current work, and I wonder how much I could have pushed the atmosphere in this painting if I understood why it was so compelling. The first thing that I would definitely change is the hand in the back. It circles the viewer's eye back into the portrait of this painting, which is fantastic. I would soften the edges here. Knowing where to soften the edges in your painting can do a lot of things. It can allude to movement, it could make something look like it's glowing. In this case, it would kind of help support this steamy type of atmosphere and leave the sharper details for the more important moments of this piece. Today, I would also add a brighter warm light onto the chest. I think that this painting is really craving that brighter flesh color to broaden the range of values. This is, I think it's a strong C tier for me. Okay, so I'm 17 here, and looking back at every painting I've ever made, I think that this painting was probably the fulcrum where the seesaw tipped over. It was probably my favorite painting for a couple years after I finished it, and once again, I was working so much at the time, and I was doing pretty quick projects. Painting so much, you're bound to accidentally stumble into a gem like this, and that's why sometimes when you start out, quantity can sometimes supersede quality. The reference photo here did most of the heavy lifting, already doing all of the color theory and lighting that I try to create in all of my current work. I didn't understand the magic of this reference photo when I made it, but I knew that it was there, and that's what matters. Once again, I wonder what I could do now that I understand the relationships that are present. The right half of this painting is spectacular. The colors on the face is some of my best work yet. And the use of media on the chest is really cool. I loved using eggshell at the time. The body is misproportioned, and I really wish that I used the left side of this painting to circle attention back into the face, but I just didn't know how. I don't want to spoil too much, but I am repainting this reference right now, and it's gonna be my first individual portrait in my 1 through 100 series. I'm gonna make a process video video for that painting like I've done for a couple others now, and in that video I'm going to go absolutely ham trying to verbalize these color relationships and the lighting that I'm alluding to here. Soon you will actually be able to see what I can do with this reference photo now that I understand it. B tier. Now this is oil paint on top of encaustic, which is beeswax paint that you melt to apply in like a griddle. It's really cool. And that's really funky for me, and I had a great time. I was doing some Van Gogh type brushwork in this piece, and when you do brushwork like this, it's all about direction and leading the eye. Look at his fingers, for example. The brushwork is traveling at a right angle across the fingers, blending them together. Eyes follow the shape of lines in paintings, so his fingers would have led your eyes straight off the canvas. Instead, the brushwork kind of circles your eye back into the focal point, his face. It's impressive that I thought to do the brushwork in that way instead of just having the brushwork follow the shape of the fingers, because to me that kind of feels like the default. It's visually interesting when you articulate these directional forms with contrasting brush movement. I don't know why yet, but I just think it looks cool. On the other note, however, what is the overall gesture or movement in this painting? Right now, I can't draw a gestural line to identify where I want the viewer's eyes to follow, and that is a compositional mistake. I worked from a reference photo I took while I was packed into the back of my friend's car. The webbing of the shadows on the roof and the sides of the car are the most interesting part of this reference picture. I love this reference, by the way, and I didn't do it justice at all within this composition. At the time, I was really into these cropped, vertical type of compositions, but if I were to open up the composition horizontally, look at all of these directional lines I'm capable of finding. I could even have some fun warping these shadows to create vectors that direct the viewer's eye even better. There's just so much possibility, and this would be something really interesting to revisit. I still really enjoy this piece. There is a great memory attached to it, and it has an undeniable mood that I think is successful. I could say a lot more about color and whatever the fuck this swirl at the bottom of the painting is achieving, but for now, I'm going to place Simon in the back of Trent's car safely in the C tier. Okay, this is my first painting after my solo show that I had at the end of my senior year. I really like the brushwork in the sky and around the legs. It looks authentically spontaneous, not like I'm just trying to prove that I can be loose. This is a great example of how having blurred edges can add a great glow and atmosphere. The blue dissolving off his shoulder really helps the upper body sink into this painting. Zooming in on the face, I think I could have pushed this by completely dissolving the highlight on the left side of his face into the background. The contour here isn't needed to understand the shape of the form. Right now I'm thinking about some of the horizons in Monet's paintings. I think that some of his strongest, most atmospheric work is so blown out that the horizon is indistinguishable from the sky. I've actually learned so much by looking at landscape artists as a figurative painter. When I really zoom in, I can also see the texture of the canvas, which is pretty distracting. I think I could have benefited from using more paint or building up my canvas through the priming process with gesso and sanding. Doing this blurs the canvas so that you aren't fighting it as much. Also, diagonals are standardly very powerful in paintings, and James's leg is such a powerful diagonal in this painting, and that is paralleled by the right side of his body mass. I would ask my younger self this question: where do the diagonals lead? Nowhere. If I think about his leg and the side of his body as vectors, what if they intersected at the most interesting part of this painting? His face would need to be a little bit further to the left to make this work, but just think about where the lines are leading in your painting. This might be a C tier for me, but for now I'm gonna put it in D just to be safe. This is a painting I did in my free time during my first and only semester at college. It is of my friend Tristan, who was my best friend that I met while I was there. I dropped out after my first semester because I felt like I already had enough of the experience I needed, and I didn't want to pay for another semester that I couldn't afford. I don't think that I'm above art school, and I definitely don't regret going. I think that I had, within that time period, some of the most noticeable growth to my skill. Also, something of important notice, I think, is that this is my first painting that ever went viral. I filmed and posted this fake 30-second process video in my dorm room between classes, and when I posted it, I had like 70 followers, and today I have like 100,000. I don't want to sound lame, but this was one of the coolest things to ever happen to me. I never doubted my skills as I was growing, and honestly, I've always had a pretty big ego regarding my art, but to literally overnight have the affirmation of millions about my lifetime passion, It was the craziest feeling ever. Tristan is trans, and meeting at a similar point in our gender journey was really, really important to me. I painted him in a binder, glorious in a circular sweeping gesture. Usually when artwork depicts a trans body, hands are a pretty cliche symbol of oppression, to suffocate or hold back. In this painting, Tristan's hands are free and glorious around him, representing the queer joy that I was discovering at college. The title is his name with the second I capitalized. When we were talking about our chosen names, he told me about how he chose Tristan, and the second I was really important so that people still knew that he was gay. I think that this is really funny, but I also capitalized the second I in the title to represent this new, almost selfish phase of my life. How I was diverging from what was expected of me, and I took a giant step for myself in my career. All that said, this painting is really important for me, and I'm so unbelievably grateful that I was able to honor our friendship in this painting. To critique, in this painting I was really interested in creating movement in my artwork at the time. So how can you capture a multi-stage gesture in one image? I think that the sweeping hand on the right of this painting could have been much more successful if I applied the paint differently. Those thick, impressionistic strokes are very graphic, and sharp designs usually exist very still in a painting. Blending out this brushwork in the shape of the gesture would have alluded to movement far better than what I've done here. This gesture is the heart of this painting in my eyes, but I think that you can tell that this painting is a young artist's first attempt at making this complicated effect. It would have been interesting to see myself get much more funky with the composition. What if there was an echo of Tristan's entire figure overlapping on top of him, turning his entire body around, encircled in this flurry of arms around him? I wish I had the gall to take the risks that would take this painting to an entirely otherworldly dimension. I have a lot I could say about color, and there are some anatomy issues going on, but all that considered, Tristan is D tier for me. This was the last painting that I made while I was at art school, and it went viral on TikTok too, which was just as crazy. It made me much more assured that the last one wasn't a fluke. Once again, this painting honors a relationship that I grew while I was at school. This time, it was the lunch lady named Geraldine. I met with Geraldine every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a chat before breakfast. I was drawn to her because I could feel this kindness when we exchanged smiles, and I never saw a student attempt to extend a conversation. It was difficult for me to navigate a relationship with her because she is an elderly Christian woman, and I am radically queer and non-binary. This painting was used for me to work through a lot of the expectation that society holds for queer tolerance. I do not believe that it's fair to expect the oppressor and the oppressed to link arms and waltz into a future of equality. That undermines the indescribable pain that queer people have experienced in the hands of the church. I found myself being increasingly polarized from the church when I met Geraldine. Through our relationship, Geraldine eventually revealed to me the troubles that she still grapples with today about her father's wrongdoings, and her late husband, and her trans and queer grandchildren. I think that we were both very important for each other, in that I showed her the love of the queer community, and she showed me what God's love looks like to her. Underneath this painting, I have collaged pages of the Bible gifted to me by a campus ministry. This reflects to me how our relationship was always kind of underscored by her looming Christianity. Looking back, I have had some troubles justifying a piece that empathizes a community that is the oppressor. I do not expect religious tolerance within my community. What I still stand behind is that no progress can be made if Christian people have never had a conversation with a queer person. Humans are not a spectacle to barrage through legislature without ever hearing their voice. Through my conversations with Geraldine, I watched her wheels start to turn. I offered her my lived experience of gender dysphoria that she was then able to connect with her trans grandchildren. She even asked me one day if I was gay by choice, but somehow I still felt her love, and she seemed to be understanding of my answer. What I still stand behind is this. No progress can be made if the religious and the queer stand in our own corners brewing hatred for each other, and I ask the viewer to reflect on our relationship. As for the ranking, I think that this is the best portrait I've ever painted. I feel her soul when I look at the face, and it's hard to explain, but somehow I found that warmth and sensitivity. When you have that in a portrait, there's just some magic, and that definitely bumps up this painting significantly in my ranking. One of the details that I can offer insight on is how I made the deepest pockets of this painting not the darkest, but the most atmospheric. The pockets of her eyes, nostrils, and the corners of her mouth are this deep gray color, not a black, which really set it behind the warmth of the rest of the portrait. The rest of this painting is far less impressive, however, it does not take away from the accomplishment of the face. The hands are very poorly considered, and I tried to add that atmospheric gray color to the bottom right corner of this canvas, and it makes absolutely no sense. She is positioned in this painting leaning back, or at least that's what I was going for. So the bottom of her torso should be the darkest color so that it pops through the atmosphere towards the viewer. For the face alone, I think I'm gonna put Geraldine in the B tier, but it's almost an A in my heart. I love you, Geraldine. Now I'm 19, Sinking was the first painting I made as a full-time artist. I also really think I hit it out of the ballpark with this one. The way that I rendered this idea to paint a figure underwater impressionistically with surreal lighting, it is just so visually striking. I have a really great grasp of portraiture. It's almost always my favorite part of a painting, and I just do not have the same innate understanding of the human body. Granted, the reference photo is literally taken underwater, so there is some refraction and warping in the anatomy, but logically, the next step for me as an artist would be to do a bunch of academic figure drawings. If I pounded out like 200 figure drawing sessions, I think that my abilities would just skyrocket, but that sounds so miserable. I'm simply just not interested in learning figures in an academic setting like that. I said it in the beginning of this video, but if you are not interested in something and you force yourself through it, you are just gonna burn yourself out. And now you have the ability, but you never wanna make art again, so was it worth it? For me, I'm just gonna keep creating overambitious figurative work, and with each one I complete, I will understand the human body more and more. Everybody learns how they learn, and I want to learn while I'm creating stuff that brings me joy. One detail that I would change, let's zoom in on the face. I used this lighter lilac type color to indicate the structure of the right side of the nose, like a rim light kind of. I think it adds some great structure, but that cool purple color is nowhere else in the painting. Having too many saturated colors competing for attention can dilute the impact of the brightest moments. Today, I would gray that color down a bit so that it is harmonious with the rest of the palette. I mostly dislike critiques that fundamentally change almost everything about this painting, but this is my own art, so I can say whatever I want. Don't critique art like this. What if it was a different composition? I'm fine with the centralized, beatific type of composition, but how can I push it? Does this painting really need my legs in it? And what if I had my arms above my head, traveling back into the water, giving this painting something of depth? And what does depth look like underwater? What does that look like impressionistically? I think that the concept of painting an underwater portrait impressionistically is a strong seed to create a masterpiece, and that is what makes Sinking great. But what if I took that idea and matched it with a similarly stellar composition? It would be something that I would be interested in revisiting, and I still love this painting, and it means a lot to me, so I'm going to put this painting safely in the A tier. So we are now getting to the part of the video where it's pretty difficult for me to understand everything that's going on. I painted this about a year ago, and since then I only have about 6 more big paintings under my belt. I think that the pose could have been far more engaging. I was inspired by Klimt's Water Serpents too, and if you show the paintings next to each other, I don't even stand a chance. I should have spent another couple days sketching and messing around until I found a pose that was actually worth rendering out. Retrospectively, reading this painting left to right, I see it traveling from an ethereal night-like scene to this naturalistic daylight environment. Once again, I keep reiterating this, but how could I have pushed this further, especially on the left? I'll put a couple paintings on screen that I wish I could have pointed myself towards for inspiration. I wish that I had expanded my aesthetic language, because right now this painting is too the same across the whole thing, and that's what makes it look so muddy. Also, it is important to note that the mark making is way too samey. It's pretty effective on the upper body and the arm, but this painting is parched for some larger gestural marks. I'm gonna put Sorry I Can't Match in the D tier. Still above Morgan Freeman though. Piss me off. Up next is definitely my most recognizable painting, Under God I Don't Believe In. This is a really simple painting, but I think that's what makes it so effective. I worked from a photo of me leaning against my bed and everything else I just made up. I really love this painting. All of the energy in the sky is radiating towards the portrait and you're sucked right in. I love how the halo warps the environment. The inside is more atmospheric, and I really pushed the saturation there. The blue on the cheek helps to push it back into the painting and make that plane separate from the rest of the portrait. And it contrasts really good with the orange bursting up. And it's just a badass title that a lot of people have resonated with. There are a couple things I could still clock if I wanted to push myself further. Firstly, I could have varied up my paint application much more. I'll pop some more inspirations on screen that I wish I could have pointed myself towards. I could have literally done whatever I wanted with the sky, so just push it further. And the grass is just painted a solid notch below everything else in this painting, I think. Imagine if there were some blades where just the tips were caught golden by the sun. For me, this is my favorite painting that I've ranked so far, so I think I'm gonna put it in the A tier. These last three paintings I'm going to talk about have all been documented very thoroughly on this channel. If you want to watch me talk through the grueling processes front to back, everything that you'd want to know, those videos are posted. I also have posted the cut down time lapses if you just want to sit back and watch the first to the last brushstroke. This painting has really grown on me. It is just my style to a T, and that's just a taste thing, so I understand if you disagree. The way I painted the chest is some of my best painting ever. The way it dissolves into the background on the left side is a great example of how you don't need harsh lines to identify forms. And as I said before, diagonals are very powerful in art, and I can find so many in this painting, and they all work together to create this grand gesture over this piece. I could probably paint 98% of this piece with just 4 colors: black, white, red, and yellow. This is called the Zorn palette, and it has been used to great effect. I just wonder what this painting would look like if I expanded the colors I was using a little bit. Or maybe I don't even need to expand my palette. Sometimes just toning back some areas can actually help a painting look less muddy. There's a great tip that I think has a lot of validity when you're making art. Sometimes the most effective way to improve a painting is by scraping away paint instead of adding more. For me, this is really tough, but I think I'm gonna put this in A tier, just under a god I don't believe in. On to this diva. Her full name is "My favorite Christmas movie was made by a TERF, and so the last breath of a child heaved goodbye." Let's calm down. The strongest part of this piece is definitely the atmosphere. I was looking at a bunch of Christmas nostalgia images while I was painting this, and I think that it's really impressive that I made a painting look so warm and comforting while only using blue. Atmosphere is the most used word in this video, I'm so sorry, but a huge struggle that I was running into with this painting was maintaining a strong atmosphere while altering the brightness of my shadows. What you have to do to get away with this is to paint a really high contrast environment and paint it in a very low contrast way. So if the scene that you're trying to represent has all of the values 1 through 10, that will look great when you add a strong atmosphere, because you will still have a lot of contrast even after you chop off the lowest 2 values. This painting is a night scene, so the highest values, the brightest whites, are not present in this environment. And when you chop off the bottom 2 values to create an atmosphere, you are only limiting the language that you can use to create a fantastic painting. It's really apparent in this painting that I was fighting for contrast, especially on the figure, so I'm going to place it in... Should I put it in the B tier? Okay, high C. Okay, first of all, oh my god, thank you so much for the outpouring of love on this painting. It's really crazy to be able to post a 45-minute video about one painting and have thousands of people care to watch, and to be able to have nuance about the conversations regarding my art. It's just so cool, and I'm so inspired. But with a larger platform comes a lot of opinions. And this painting received a level of criticism that I did not expect at all. It proportionally got like 10 times more hate than any of my other paintings I've ever gotten before, and I was really shocked because I was so proud. And after making a bunch of short form videos about this painting, it never really left my circle of the internet, at least not to the extent that my other content usually performs. I'm really nervous that I'm just really delusional about this painting, but guys, it's not that bad. To put it in perspective, if I were to make this type of painting skillfully, it would probably be about 8 times more difficult than any other painting I've showed you so far. To combine the amount of reference photos I used, to have 9 figures in one painting, and to have every single one of them service the greater composition, that is just so much more difficult than I could have ever imagined. Paintings are usually read from left to right, so let's read this painting for a second. My eyes start on Trent, And then there's this really impressive sweeping S gesture over the entire painting where it goes down and it follows through Hannah and Addie, and then we get to Simon, and eyes follow straight lines in a painting, so you know where my eyes lead to next? Bam! Right off the canvas. Right off the canvas. This is a ginormous flaw, and I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. What this painting really needs is something to circle your eyes back into the composition so that the viewer's eyes are left lingering. I love how impressive and big the sky is in this painting, so I don't want to put another figure up there, but I could absolutely use this fabric or air motif to circle the viewer's eyes back into the composition. It's very obvious in this painting that my figurative skills are not at all near my knowledge of portraiture. Will I be doing anything about this? No. I find it interesting that across all levels of my art, I'm wishing that I had dived into my ideas more. The most interesting parts of my paintings are conceived to about 70% of what they could be. Take more risks, get more funky, have more fun, step away from what you think you're trying to represent, and push the paint around until you find something that's way cooler. All that said, I feel like 1 through 100 is a safe B tier, and that, my friends, is a completed tier list. Honestly, I feel great about it, but what do you guys think? Are my rankings buck, or do they align with your opinions? Sometimes I watch art critiques online, and I get really pissed off that I have to click off the video because the critiques are just so out of line. With more perspective, and the better I get at looking at art, the more I realize that my older paintings that I was once so proud of can still be improved if only I knew how. Let me know, do you want to see me make another video like this? I still have hundreds of older pieces that I could happily tear apart. Some of the pieces in this video are for sale. If I had them next to me, I'm selling them privately. You can email me, tailsjackal@gmail.com. Heels, Jazzmyne, Morgan Freeman, and Simon in the back of Trent's car are all for sale through J. Petter Galleries, and that link is in my bio. There's a bunch of my other work from high school still listed through that gallery if you want to check that out as well. I have prints available of some of the pieces I showcase in this video, and it's not pink eye, I had eye surgery. With that, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you all again very soon.